Alright, today we're going to go over the quick modifications we make on the central line trainers that we use. From the factory, it's a great product and we really like it. We've tried a lot of other manufacturers and just haven't lived up to our needs as well as this one. But we're still having problems in two ways, and we've come up with fixes, and we're just here to share that today. The first problem is compressibility of the vessel under ultrasound. So when the student looks at the vessels under ultrasound, the artery is very compressible as well as the vein, and that's giving them the wrong idea. The second problem is when they go ahead and thread their wire in, sometimes it'll hang up right as they're threading it to its maximum point. And the reason is from the factory, it comes glued in with these two hoses here, and it's got this connection. Now what we do is we end up taking that out and separating the two tubes. And when we did that, we've realized that when we thread that in, it can actually get caught up and bend and hang up right there. So again, it gives the learner the wrong idea. So I'm going to tell you how we fix that. The first thing we do is take any sort of flat blade. You don't want it too sharp, but you want it sort of sharp. You don't want it to be like a sharp knife, but something. And we then take out the plastic adapter. And when you take it out, it's going to be connected like that. As you can see, there's a central connection point as well as the one you can see outside. And what we do is, very nicely and very easily, you want to just kind of barely take it off and scrape the product or the silicone off of the hard plastic. You don't want to cut because you're trying to save as much of it as possible. The other thing I do is when I get down to this point here, I try to scrape it off this septum or this central connection point here and then cut it. And if you're very careful, you can cut one side of it and then you separate it, and therefore you're going to tear less of the tissue between the two tubes. And that's important because if you tear too much of this in here and then you don't seal it well enough, you can get the red and the blue fluids that mix, and then you've got two purple vessels and the learner just doesn't know where they're at. So that gives the wrong idea. So you just want to gently scrape it off, and back it out. And therefore, you're left with what looks like that. And as you can see, that septum or that central point has got a little bit of a cut, but past that, not much. Then comes into our fixes. First fix I'm going to talk about is compressibility. And what we do is we take just regular old suction tubing that we've got boatloads of around here, and normally that has a natural curve on it. It usually doesn't hurt anything, but we just straighten it out. If you take a heat gun like this, carefully, remember, high temperature, and then apply the heat on this arc, and sometimes I'll use an ET tube stylet or just a rigid wire, and make sure at the end it ends up kind of like this. Okay? At that point, we usually take any sort of lubricant you can find. I really like Ultrasound Gel because it is water soluble, and when you put your fluids in there, it's not going to gunk up and then give you something that's going to occlude your needles, occlude anything that you need to put in here and make a problem later on. So Ultrasound Jelly seems to work real well. And what you do is you just lube your tube, and you want to insert it into the artery. Make sure you're doing the right one, not the vein, because the vein you want compressible. Usually I'll cut a section and I will insert it all the way in until I can't insert it anymore comfortably without tearing the tissue or possibly damaging it. And then what I'll do is I'll just push or palpate in there and figure out where it's at and make sure it's up to the flat point at the end. The nice thing is there's no angles at the end. It butts up to here, and that is a flattened period, so you don't need to worry about an angle on the end of your tube or anything like that. So we do that, and then you want to measure where you need to cut that tubing off at. So you'll get your finger up in there, see where that tube you just placed terminates, and see if it's in the right place. If not, you'll have to pull it out, measure it first, pull it out, cut it, relubricate, and then push it in. And then that solves the compressibility problem. The next problem, a little more tricky, but works out real well. I use a number 3 size LMA, or laryngeal mask airway. Just open that up. We cut off right at the LMA portion of the tube, and we cut it off completely. And what we're doing is we're going to end up having this, the point that we would hook up to a bag valve or a vent circuit, as to where the wire is going to go into, because it's tapered and it's a much larger diameter, and it'll go in your wires. We've had much less bending of wires, which lets us use our wires longer, lets us use our kits a lot longer. Once you cut it off, you're going to need to get the tube off of your the vein tube off of your adapter that you saved, and discard that. You want to take the tube and you need to spread this over the, just going to go cut this, and you need to spread this tube in order to put it over the LMA tubing. And of course I cut the wrong part, but you get the idea. So you could use just this, but I'm going to show you what we do is we use the whole tube. And you want to spread the original tube to go over that. Okay. Variety of ways you can do that. We ended up happening along this trousseau dilator that went into 3 different ways, and it works out real well. Still not super easy, but it works. So we spread that nicely, insert, remove the tool, and you want to make sure there's enough on there. Like I would definitely put that on a little bit farther here. And then usually we take, you can secure it with super glue a little bit, but you also want to probably have a couple of zip ties. You want to take 2 zip ties minimum and have them opposed, because if you've ever done a zip tie with fluids, usually where the zip tie portion draws up, it will actually tent your tube just a little bit, allowing fluid to escape. But if you put those buckles on either side, it'll secure it nicely and give you a nice watertight secure or seal. So once you've got that adapter on the end like that, it's the same sort of trick that we're doing for the suction tubing. You want to lubricate it a little bit, insert it in there, and give it a nice test fit. Now, I don't even cut those ears off because I allow these little 2 ears to stick in the silicone to grab it better. That way you don't accidentally pull it out later and get fluid everywhere, or you got to delay training and it's just a problem. Okay? Once you've test fit everything, you want to pull everything out and clean your surfaces real well. Usually we clean it with acetone and just some Q-tips. And so you want to clean all the surfaces that you're going to end up gluing to secure. Previously we had secured it, just kind of bound it with some 2-inch tubing or some IV tourniquets, things like that. But if you ever pull on this for any reason, and you end up pulling the tubes out, and that's a problem. So we end up using Silpoxy from Smooth-On. You can just order this from smoothon.com. Things that super glue and other glues won't work with is silicone, but this works really great with about 80% of silicone surfaces, this being one of them. So at that point is we've test fit everything, and you want to take something and just take little bits of your glue and just coat the inside surfaces here. Okay? Then seat everything back the way it was supposed to go. So we're going to put the artery in with some glue, and then we would sink this all the way into where it should go, and palpate and feel where where it terminates and where it should be. At that point, everything's going to glue up. I usually do take an IV tourniquet and I band it twice, then tie it for while the glue is curing. I'll leave that for a day, just overnight. And then the tubes are glued in, tightly. You can fill it with your fluids, and it's ready for service. So, hope you like that. That's just what we do around here. If you like it, give us a thumbs up. That kind of helps us know that you like it. Leave any comments and questions in the video, and look forward to hearing from you. Thanks.